And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network. Well, at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the original mothership at coalition.radio.us, where since 2013 we've been broadcasting irrelevant, irreverent, incredible, incremental, whatever. We've been having conversations with people from the libertarian perspective, a socialist perspective, virtually every type of opinion, every type of third rail issue, if you will, on the political spectrum. Clearly, though, 2020, 2021, the years of COVID. We're focusing this week on a very libertarian response with some very special libertarians. Tomorrow night we'll be hosting Shane Hazel. And on Thursday we're going to pivot to the tragedy, to the genocide, to the American-supported, American-endorsed genocide that's taking place in Yemen. But tonight we continue to focus on, if you will, the business, the civil liberties, and the surrounding issues, non-medical, that are the result, if you will, of the coronavirus, of COVID-19. Someone who now officially qualifies as a repeat offender here on the Coalition. This is his second appearance. He appeared earlier this year with Mark Rutherford and, of course, Connor Jagodas, in a conversation that we had around the issues surrounding, if you will, what at that point in time seemed to be at least a somewhat clear track to landing from this nightmare. With the ascension, if you will, of the Biden administration, with the appearance, if you will, now of multiple quote-unquote versions of the disease, allegedly more efficient, if you will, at spreading, and combined with the chaos surrounding the reopening of America and the seemingly incompatible now recent announcements of reopenings of states like California and New York, while at the same time those states, at least based on the pre-Biden administration ascension, would have been judged some of the worst in the nation. So what we've got a mess. We've got pure chaos, but emerging from that chaos is a different generation of leaders, and one of them is Andrew Cooperrider. He is, of course, the protagonist in a now long-running Greek drama called Kentucky. Some guy named Andy Bashir, a supporting cast of judges and law enforcement and health department officials, challenging, if you will, the central right of someone to conduct commerce in a cooperative, non-coercive manner with other individuals free to make their own choices. And ultimately, despite all the sturm and drang, despite all the noise, despite all the chaos, despite all the vaccinations, despite all the different variations on the theme, that is ultimately what we are still boiling down to. The rights of individuals to simply make their own decisions, good or bad, without full knowledge of sometimes of, well, how they'll turn out. But while making those decisions, taking full responsibility for them. Andrew Cooperrider, welcome back to the Coalition. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Pat.
Let's do a little bit of Brewed 101. There are people who are going to hear this who are very familiar with your story, with the backstory here. Other folks haven't. So just give us, if you will, a snapshot of Brewed, how it came to be.
Sure.
What for those of us who, like you, think two of the basic food groups are in fact coffee and beer, understand where your place stands in the heavenly firmament known as life.
Right. So we're a coffee and beer shop, and we had just been a normal everyday coffee shop. And our governor back in November saw fit, even though the numbers are actually were lower than they are now, he saw fit to issue an indoor dining lockdown. Now, the reasoning behind this was they were going to see a spike with the Thanksgiving. But as I understand it, and all the data states, is that, you transmit COVID in homes, and the real spike from Thanksgiving occurs from people traveling. So instead of course, doing any kind of attempt to mitigate anything there, instead he decides, hey, you know where it is? It's the restaurants that have been open this entire time with the same amount of people in it because you've had a capacity. And that hasn't contributed to the numbers greatly, but hey, we're going to close those. So he decides he's going to close those. We interpret his orders how we do, and the health department showed up a few days after and disagreed with our interpretation of his orders. We disagreed with their right to close us, and kind of some interesting legal wrangling mixed with some PRing, mixed with some just being bold enough to say, you know what do I got to lose? Send me to jail. And with a mix of that together, we were able to work with a few other restaurants in the area and work with this fantastic group led by a gentleman named Fernando, who was from Cuba. And while he was in Cuba, was arrested several times for making us sandwiches. And remembering that and seeing our plight, he decided to start the Rescue Restaurant Coalition that then started circulating a petition that over 1,000 restaurants signed on to. What this petition stated is when the governor's, that order we were in expired, they were going to reopen to 50% dining, whether he liked it or not. They were just going to do it. And what we saw in turn, also with our case, is it created some case precedent stating that, quite frankly, if 1,000 restaurants opened up because of our case, the bond and everything else, you couldn't afford to close them all. And on top of that as well, when we were asked to close, what we were asked to do is stop preparing food, and we did. However, I can't control a food truck show up outside and start serving food. And because the order was wrote so terribly, it allowed event venues to have a capacity of 25 and you could eat in them. So people would take food from the food truck, and the food truck just happened to sell coffee. And they were able to find some staff actually, because, I had to lay people off. I was closed down. So they're able to find some staff to actually help them get into the coffee business. And it does make good sense that as a food truck outside of an old coffee shop, I would also start selling coffee. That's just capitalism 101. Additionally, it would make sense as well if I didn't have that equipment and I was outside of a coffee shop that seems to have this equipment, I might rent that from them. And so, these trucks ended up serving food and coffee, and people would take that. They'd come inside, sit down and eat it. And for a while, we were the only place in Lexington you could actually eat inside. You just had to bring your own food from wherever you brought it from. And, that was really embarrassing for the governor, to the point where every day he's being asked during his media briefs, why is Brewed still open? Brewed's still serving food. What are you going to do about it? And their response was for the health department to pretty much call us up and beg us to take back our food license. So about 3-4 days before the order was set to expire, and he was already had been committing to not renewing it, they offered us back our food license if we just behaved for like a few days. And, we took back our license and we behaved. I mean, yeah, we did a Santa Claus event and things like that, but, we behaved, I guess. Anyway, so, and then, so for those 3-4 days, and then we got back our food license, but we didn't get back our ABC license. Well, through all that, I'm getting tons of stories from business owners all over the country and from people locally in Kentucky, just their different COVID issues. So it's kind of starts for a couple weeks there. We traveled to, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and we worked with some great groups, the PMA groups and the Constitutional Law Group, EAT, Entrepreneurs Against Tyranny, there in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania actually has over 1,000 restaurants open to indoor dining. They just don't talk about it. And, Minnesota there, we worked with Reopen Minnesota and We the People out of Wisconsin. And so these groups, we just started working with them. they'd asked to come speak because our story showed a light at the end of the tunnel, because these restaurants are getting their licenses taken. They're in and out of court. They're getting attacked, and they don't know what is the light at the end of the tunnel. And getting to talk to somebody who had at least gotten their food license back gave them some hope. And as well, we were able to give them some tactics and help with some different ways to basically embarrass your governor into lifting the orders like we did here in Kentucky. And so we worked with them on that. And then we started getting all these stories here in Kentucky, and an opportunity presented itself. The way it works in Kentucky is any citizen can actually impeach the governor.
Wow.
So myself and a couple other petitioners joined in, and we filed articles of impeachment for a committee to consider here in Kentucky. The committee has picked up that articles of impeachment into their committee, and they asked for the governor to issue a defense. He has. We then gave our response to his defense today, and the committee should meet tomorrow, and we'll see what they come up with and where they land on it. And I can go into the impeachment order and his defense and our defense and things like that if you'd like. It's just really a Kentucky thing, so it gets a little interesting because it deals with the Kentucky Constitution. But what's most important there is, what it takes to push back is people saying, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I will, to great cost, because of course, if the committee doesn't pick up the petition, or if they do and it goes to the House and then to the Senate and he's not convicted, they do have the possibility of passing that cost, which we all know how much it costs to impeach somebody. It's pretty expensive, onto the petitioners. And so at great risk of cost, at great risk of continued, scrutiny with our business, we still decided to file and take part in that fight. But as well, last week we were able to get back our ABC license. And how that happened is they had it held from us, and they said, hey, we're not going to give it back. You have a hearing, administrative hearing in February. We're not going to give it back. And so my attorney was like, I want to file for emergency injunctive hearing to lift that. And finding out that they'd be in front of a judge and having to go under oath, and we have a FOIA request out with the state regarding some documents too as well. For whatever reason, they decided to forego the injunctive hearing. The administrative hearing is still scheduled, but until then, they gave me back my license and actually paid my renewal fees for me, which is, I don't know, shocking. I don't know why they did that, but they did. There's some theories. Were they afraid to go under oath? Were they afraid of the fight? What have you? There's some theories there, but basically the ABC was like, I guess we'll just give it back to you. And we still have that administrative hearing, but that's not in front of a judge. That's in front of their own kind of administrative group. So it's a little bit safer for them.
Mm-hmm. So what, specifically in terms of impeachment in the great state of Kentucky, sure, what do you have to claim? What is the burden of proof, and what's the next step? First of all, what's astonishing when you do a show like this, you end up talking with folks who are subject matter experts in their own state constitutions from literally everywhere. And we don't even in Rhode Island, and Soviet Workers Paradise, aka Rhode Island, we don't even have the right to draw up ballot petitions, if you will, in the sense of, end the property tax, or we have no ballot initiative included in ours. The only way that we can impeach or we can remove a governor from office is if he, or in this case, she, performed a criminal act. So, obviously, sure, I think we knew this going in, that even as oppressed as you may feel at times in the great state of Kentucky, Rhode Island is the... Wow, it's Solzhenitsyn-like. We are the Siberia of personal liberty. So what are the standards? What do you do? What's the process?
So, obviously the standards are similar to most. You have to say he's committed crime, carried out a gross negligence of office or miscarriage of office. And so there's a couple charges we have in our impeachment. The first one is his First Amendment rights violation. So there's a couple violations he's done that he has been found in court to have been guilty of. And the first and foremost is the First Amendment violation. So this is what our governor did. And, you can go onto our page, Brewed, and we've posted our response, and you can see his response and stuff. So as I say this and you think to yourself, well, where's the sources and things? It's open records requests, it's FOIA requests. They're all in our legal responses. So this is what our governor did on Easter. On Easter, he said, hey, can't have these churches celebrating Easter. So he put a mass gathering ban in place. And this mass gathering ban, what it did is it said pretty much you couldn't go to church. And a bunch of churches still said, hey, we're going to have Easter, right? It's Easter. We're going to go to church. And so the governor turned to his KSP chief, Kentucky State Police chief, and said, here's a list of churches. I want you to go write tickets to people who go to church. And the KSP chief said, that's a First Amendment violation. And the governor said, this is all open record requests. He literally said, that's a violation of the First Amendment. And our governor said, I don't care, do it anyways. And so they go and do it. And some of the people that they ticketed actually filed in court against the governor and won that case. And it was found to be a First Amendment violation by the Sixth District Court. Also, as well, to back that up, there's been a recent decision, Brooklyn Diocese v. Cuomo in the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court. And there is a fantastic decisioning there that really puts to bed a lot of these can provoke, religious schools and churches. What can and can't you do? But he was found in the Sixth District Court to have infringed on their First Amendment rights. And he knowingly did that. So that occurred. Let's put that to the side because let's fast forward to this last order. So once again, despite him already having been in trouble for First Amendment violation, he closes religious schools along with public schools in his Thanksgiving order. And when he closed them until, I believe, December 12th. Well, once again, the Sixth Circuit District and that Supreme Court ruling had already occurred. So he knew he was going against the Supreme Court ruling. And additionally, for a full 6 days of that order, there was a occurrence in the Sixth Circuit District Court, which is the one that handles Ohio, Kentucky, and I think Michigan. Anyway, and that ruling in that court stated it was a Toledo religious school versus the health department up there, and once again ruled against the closing of religious schools by the governors. But yet, even though that ruling occurred and he's in the district for a full 6 days, he did it. So he's in contempt of court for a full 6 days in January as well. So that's the first charge, which already sounds like enough to impeach a governor, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that's
but it gets worse.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that at Brewed there's always parting gifts and everybody goes home if you're dealing with the governor, a loser? Is that?
Yeah. No. There's more. There's more. So that's one charge. So putting that to the side, let's talk about mass gathering again. So he banned mass gathering and protests, and he banned protests from occurring at the Capitol. Or sorry, he set up a free speech zone. Oof. And so during. That's right. It was at the parking garage, far away from the governor's mansion and the legislators' offices. But I'm sure that wasn't on purpose. And so he set up this free speech zone and banned the protests from occurring on the Capitol grounds themselves. So he was taken to court for that because a group wanted to have a protest and they were denied their access to the Capitol grounds. In that ruling, what's important too is they did agree that the Capitol grounds is a public forum owned by the public that is a common place. It's the town square that is a place where you should be allowed to protest. And the governor agreed to that. And that's important here in a second. So, but what's more interesting than that mass gathering order, 2 weeks after he's banned a protest from occurring on Capitol grounds, the governor has his own political mass gathering on Capitol grounds where several hundred people showed up to it. Mm-hmm. And so he ignored his own order, had his own mass gathering, right? But it was for something he supported. So that's why it was okay. And so then the governor, even though he's already under a court ruling saying he can't close where he admitted Capitol grounds or public space and can't close them to protests, he closed them again after the January 6th incident. He closed them again using the National Guard to close down the Capitol grounds there and denied people the ability to protest on Capitol grounds again, despite a court ruling against him saying he can't do that. So, he's just doing whatever he wants as far as it goes, right? So that's number two. Here's number three. He illegally borrowed $858 million from the federal government. So listen, here's his, and I can tell you, I'll break down what his defenses are of this here in a second. But basically, rewinding. So his defense, I'll tell you what his defense was to the First Amendment charge. His defense was, and I'm not kidding you, Pat, well, I never really enforced it. So that was his defense to the first charge. Okay. His defense to the second charge was, no, that didn't really happen. And I also never really enforced it. I mean, come on. So that's his, even though he had the National Guard, protecting the grounds. Moving on to point three, though, the loan. So there is a federal law that says you can't have a negative, you have to keep paying your unemployment out. And our unemployment, according to him, was nearing zero. So he made a decision that in order to comply with this federal law, he has to borrow $850 million. There is three issues with this. First issue he says he had to do it because of federal law, and I agree. However, the Kentucky Constitution provides a remedy for this. You call a special session, and the legislators then vote on it. It's already been addressed in the Kentucky Constitution of how you address this situation. And he didn't do that. So he decided, and let's remember too, the biggest check the legislator has on the executive is the power of the purse strings.
Right.
So if the executive is able to just borrow and spend money willy-nilly on whatever he decides, it takes away that check. That's very dangerous. So additionally as well, so his defense to that is bad when it says, no, it's not that you pulled the loan. It's that you had a way to pull the loan legally and you didn't follow it because you didn't feel like it. Because what he didn't want to do is call a special session, because if he did call a special session, because Kentucky is a part-time legislator, they could then pass laws to rein in his control on his emergency powers. And so he didn't want to call them into session because then they could rein him in control. So that was his motivation for why he didn't follow the constitutional way. Now, the second problem is he claims he needed it so he didn't go into negative. The problem is our state auditor, Harmon, 4 months ago stated that the governor has no clue how much they owe in unemployment, and he gave him numbers ranging from 200 million to 2 billion. So the question is if you have no idea how much you owe, how do you know how much you need to borrow? And the people who are going to pay this back, and this is why this is important to us, the small business owners, is the small business owners. UI is completely funded by small business owners. So small business owners, so in order to pay that loan back, since it went to UI, it's got to be paid out of UI. And that means us, the small business owners of Kentucky, are going to have to pay for this loan that he decided the amount for on his own, that we have no idea how much he owes in unemployment. And then the third issue, we don't know where the money went. We don't know if the money actually all got used for unemployment or not. And we can't get any records back, and the legislators can't get any records back on where the money went. And so that creates a lot of issues as well. Mm-hmm. That's not all.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. As well, another issue we have here on the impeachment is Section 2 of the Kentucky Constitution, which states that laws of free men and their property and their lives that are arbitrary shall exist nowhere in the Commonwealth regardless of the majority. Okay, basically saying arbitrary laws cannot exist. And I did not say that word for word, but that's the point. Arbitrary laws cannot exist. So you have to ask yourself a question. So at the time I couldn't serve coffee, I could go get a lap dance. In fact, at the time I couldn't serve coffee, I could go to a movie theater. I could buy popcorn, go into that movie theater, sit down and eat it because it's an event venue. And remember, event venues, and when asked the science behind that, the health department lawyer in our case said, I don't know, I didn't write the order. So is there science behind it? Doesn't seem like it. But you can take that popcorn, sit down and eat it. However, you couldn't get a hot dog there because it was a prepared food.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Does that sound arbitrary to you? That you can get popcorn but not a hot dog because of the way it's prepared when it comes to COVID, a disease that spreads through water droplets in your nose, in your mouth?
There's a phrase that we use here at the Coalition: arbitrary and capricious. And if you were to go down to the Commerce hearings this afternoon and employ those terms, you would have seen our governor probably just start weeping. But arbitrary and capricious is certainly the terminology. Is, dude. And I know there's more, so keep on going. But this is madness.
Well, and then you've got the follow up here. There's some other charges here. We had to add a charge for consideration, First Amendment rights violation. So when we filed this petition, does your governor do their 4:00 propaganda hour or 3:00? What time is your propaganda hour?
Our propaganda hour is at 1:00. And in fact, if you go up to the Coalition YouTube page, you'll see a special section where your reporter here has gained press status. Imagine a Libertarian state party chair with press status. It's kookier than you think. Has gone every week faithfully for months now and continues to go. So yes, we have one of those, and that's a subject of another show, and more than a couple of beers for you and I, right? But
our governor has one, and so we file this petition, and he takes a full 15 minutes out of what should be a COVID update. Dude, I'm not kidding you, Pat. Go through all 4 of our personal Facebook pages to talk about what terrible, mean people we are. And to talk about how violent and terrible we are. And then on top of that, he then in his response to impeachment. So we have his impeachment articles. He responded with 46 pages. We responded with 7 pages because we didn't spend 12, 13 pages literally attacking us as petitioners. He actually has a section in his response called The Petitioners. And then he spends full pages on each person breaking down what a terrible individual we are. And so it rises to the claim of, is that a First Amendment retaliation? Also as well, are you spending taxpayer dollars to scroll through your political opponent's Facebook pages?
By the way, just if I can interject a question here, just how much is the rent being paid for the space in his head?
I don't know. It's quite a bit. I mean, it's real bothersome. Right after we filed it, it's funny, like 2 days later, his wife put out a tweet that's like, y'all are mean. You should be nicer. Think of the kids, which is real rich coming from her. Grew up, her mom's a vice president at eBay, which, by the way, is like doubled in stock price, and was the vice president at Disney while she was younger. And her dad is a famous marketing guy. Of course, our current governor's dad was the governor a couple governors before him and lived in the governor's mansion. So, they had very rough childhoods. And I'm sure when they say think of the kids, they know exactly what it is to suffer for your children. And so she goes on this rant saying, oh, you're taking my husband, you're bringing my kids into this. Now, we didn't bring his kids into it. What we mentioned was while he had a state advisory for no travel, and while Little League sports were closed in Kentucky, his kids were on a travel baseball team, and he traveled out of state so his kids could play sports that you were not allowed to play in Kentucky. And in these states he traveled to, they had higher numbers than Kentucky did. So he had determined in Kentucky with our numbers we couldn't play sports, but his kids could travel to other estates and play sports. And so, we just brought that up, okay? But he did bring that up. He actually said that I post inflammatory Facebook videos where I researched his child. That's actual words out of his impeachment response, which is interesting, to say the least.
Can I say what I've been wanting to say to him all the time? I've been listening to this and done my own reading. Bless their hearts.
Right? I mean, it's crazy. And so, so his wife puts out this tweet, choose love, everything else, all about the kids, everything else. And I made a joke. I was like, is it because she's tired of hearing my name around the dinner table? Is that what it is? She's like, that Cooperrider's at it again. So, and keep in mind too, after we filed the petition, he sends KSP to come question me.
Whoa, wait a minute. Wait.
His personal security detail to come ascertain if I'm a threat or not. Now, he claims that he came to investigate if I was a threat because somebody reported that I had issued a threat. Now, what they said that she said was that I had said, if you think that's funny, wait until you see what I have planned for the governor's mansion here in a couple of weeks. Now, what I was referencing was I cut a video on Facebook where I dropped off some of my coffee to the governor's mansion, as a sign of good faith. He did not say thank you. I was very upset that he did not say thank you. But and what I was referencing another, sort of stunt like that we had. Now, you could say, well, I could see why a person reports it. Here's what's interesting about who the witness was. The witness was a woman who was in a bank who happened to be a notary. Now, Pat, what do you think she was notarizing at the time? The impeachment documents.
Right.
So do you think she turned us in, or do you think KSP went down to investigate the notary to see if they could get it thrown out because the notary sucks? To see if this notary was in. And so he sends
pure coincidence.
Right.
Pure coincidence.
And he sends KSP down to question me. They ask me 4 or 5 questions. I answer them. They leave. Right. And, it's pretty intimidating, and one could ask the question, who was it? Donald Trump get accused or possibly impeached for like obstruction of justice and like intimidating witnesses just for saying words on TV. Mm-hmm. He literally sent his personal security detail to come question a person who petitioned him for impeachment. You would think at that point you'd want to maybe just hand it off to the local police or something so it doesn't look like. But no, he sent his personal security detail. And they had to ask his clearance first. And then in the impeachment response, he has the audacity to bring it up and then say, I'm still under investigation.
So he sends the Praetorian Guard down. The ones who, just like the ones who guard the Pope, right? And and puts the squeeze on you, as we say where I'm from in Jersey.
Right.
You think at any one moment, and I'll reference my Jersey roots. I think down south you guys call it a come to Jesus meeting. You think at any one moment he would just invite the three of you to sit down and have a cup of coffee, or maybe a beer, or maybe both at your facility, and just clear the air. Is that art, that sort of that type of cooperation or communication, is that lost now from the body politic?
I think so, because Pat, I offered that same offer. I offered several times for him to come and talk to me, and we can hash it out, discuss it. Maybe he could hear a viewpoint that he doesn't agree with. In fact, Pat, we're having such a hard time with unemployment here. I raised a volunteer force of 100 people willing to volunteer their time to help at the unemployment office to get the problem solved, to put bodies on it that we don't got to spend taxpayer dollars on. And I let him know to reach out to me for the free 100 people willing to donate their labor. And he never reached out to me.
Oh. And there's a story to be had there. There's a commonality about that, by the way, that we now live. I'm old enough to remember the quote unquote imperial presidency of Richard Nixon. I was very young then. I think I've told you before, my confession, I actually volunteered at the age of 12 for Richard Milhouse Nixon. But there was talk about the imperial presidency. I know. Hi, my name is Pat. Hi, Pat. But, now I always talk about the 1%. I love your reaction to this. And to me, the true 1% in American society now are government employees. And if you're old enough to remember Soviet era paradise, as I call it, the USSR, there was the apparatchiks. And they shopped in the dollar store, and they had the dacha, and they had the really bad, I forget what it was, the really bad Soviet car, but they had a car. They didn't rely on the tube. And essentially they lived protected lives in a little bubble, with above the frayed nerves of the common man, above the challenges and the threats and the insecurity. They exist with state employees now exist with great health insurance. The quote unquote Cadillac plans, they're unionized, all the great stuff in life. And I wonder at a certain point now, government and these bureaucracies are so removed from the concerns that we face. I'll even say pre-COVID, never mind now COVID, forget about that. You and I have to work. We have to interface with the public. We don't have a choice. The concept of furlough in our world means you go home now. No money for you. That's what a furlough means, not government speak. So are these, I guess my question is, the big question is someone like a Bashir so removed from regular folks, in New England we call them ham and eggers, by the way, that they don't feel the need to deign to lower themselves to engage with people like us? Is that true in Kentucky?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I had this great email exchange. Now I didn't have it. I posted it. Somebody else had it from a group. And it was a group that was trying to, so in the state of Kentucky, if impeachment doesn't pass committee, you can get 51 House votes to make it move out of committee onto the floor. And so this group was trying to figure out where legislators are falling. So they sent out a survey and said, hey, we need to get it back in 4 or 5 days. A no answer would be noted. That's literally what it said. And I had this House rep respond and say, and I'm saying I to make it easy because I don't know how to talk for this group, but a House rep responded and basically said, I don't respond well to threats. Acting like he doesn't get surveys all the time to fill out.
Right.
And so he says, I don't respond well to threats. And the group responded with something like, it's a part of your job as a politician to take stances on things. If you didn't want to do that, why'd you ever run? And his response was so elitist. It was basically like, you guys are rude. Nobody signed their name. Your format was bad, and worrying about all these things. And it's like, we have people, and this is an honest conversation to have. We have, I think, like 3,500 COVID deaths in Kentucky right now. We in Lexington surpassed our OD mark in August of last year. We surpassed it for that year. So and we were actually downward trending before that. So the last 4 months of last year, all that ODs, just in Lexington, are all excess ODs caused by COVID lockdowns.
Right.
We have individuals that have died because they couldn't get the surgeries they need. We have individuals that have committed suicide that we're aware of. And so when you have that number of 3,300, it is so low. I understand all those lives are important, so don't get me wrong, but it is so low to where it's not unreasonable when you look at, especially in Kentucky, the age group 30 and under, which only has 3 deaths in the entire state, that more people have died because of the COVID lockdowns than from COVID itself. And that's not even to mention the long-term ramifications of missed cancer screenings, missed health in that way, alcoholism that's been created from this. I mean, it's been long since the science has settled on it. COVID lockdowns do more damage than COVID does. They just do.
Right.
And the problem is they don't consider it at all. And they don't consider it because how can you fathom it? If you grew up the son of a governor, you're a lawyer, you're a bad lawyer based upon your written impeachment response, but you're a lawyer. I think we said he should get his money back, but you grew up a lawyer, politician, this elite class. Your wife grew up in this elite class. you have no clue what it is to actually work, to actually build anything. You've never done anything of actual value in your life. You just haven't. And let's not pretend for 1 second that what you do with your taxpayer dollars means you've done good. I know a lot of people think, well, he gave money to this group and that helped him out. But I think, was it James Madison who said, I cannot find the constitutional amendment that allows you to give out taxpayers' dollars over benevolent reasons? And he was talking at that time about them giving a couple $1,000s to some refugees and basically stating it is not the government's job to do charity. It's not that I have a problem with charity. I think charity is great. We do a lot of charity ourselves. It's that forced charity. And they don't comprehend that. And I think part of it, Pat, is because they're actually bad people. I started to realize this, is that people who believe in liberty actually think the best of others. We believe if left to their own devices, 99% of the time, people do the right thing. And that 1% of the time might be if libertarians all have different government beliefs as far as structures go. But if that 1% of the time might be why the police exist, to deal with homicide and those extreme cases and circumstances of victim violence. Otherwise, most of the time, people want to do the right thing. And we actually believe the best in people, which is also why we lose on the stage, because sometimes we're too afraid to, quote unquote, stoop to their level because we think the best of people. We think they're a good person. They're just misguided. They, on the other hand, think we're all greedy, evil, selfish people. Because if you didn't think that, why would you need to take my money to give it out for charitable reasons? Meanwhile, while the government takes its vig off the top, it doesn't make any sense. And so you haven't built anything. You haven't actually done anything of value, which what you do as a government leader, and let's not forget this, you shift value from somebody else to somebody else.
Yep.
That's it. That's what happens. You're shifting value. You don't create anything. And so when you don't create anything, you have no concept of how things occur. I think you see it a lot with, and sorry if I'm ranting, but I think you see it a lot too when you deal with, a lot of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America group people that all through the pandemic have been talking about, we need stimulus money. We need stimulus money. Well, you can't eat money. Work does need to occur to get the food on the shelves. Mm-hmm. And just giving people money doesn't guarantee that food's going to get to the shelf. In fact, it disincentivizes it because people that do the work to get the food to the shelf will start asking themselves, why am I doing this work? And we saw it with food shortages of certain type. Right. I mean, it's and so the point is those people who have never wanted truly and built anything, they don't understand how you do it. And because they don't understand how you do it, they assume it's all just somebody gave it to you. You have money. You got help here. It's no big deal if you lose it. It's no big deal if you lose your small business because they've never done it.
Right.
They've never done it. And so because of that, they can't comprehend it. And how many popularity contests would you have to win before you start thinking you know it all?
We've got a governor.
They're unwilling to talk.
We've got a governor in Rhode Island who's sitting there down in the bowels, if you will, of Congress, articulating the thought that government creates jobs, that there is their responsibility to grow the economy. You're right. They have absolutely no concept whatsoever of how to create wealth. The beauty of capitalism is that capitalism is the mechanism by which the individual can fulfill their full human potential. And the reason they do so is because risk capital is given by the investor class, all right, to invest in people's talents, skills, disruptive products, on and on and on. And they grow, they create wealth, and they create opportunity for people who then reinvest in other people. It's sweat equity, it's risk capital, all of which is foreign to the calculation here in government today. So
I think it's got to do with that old saying. Mm-hmm. If you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. Capitalism runs off that idea.
Exactly.
I need to invest in you so I can earn more, and you need my investment so you can earn more. It's a simple idea of concept, but at the same time, what the concept behind why we need government is because you're worried about people going poor in the street and everything else. I mean, look at the secretary. Look at the Department of Education. Pat, You went to school without the Secretary of Education even existing. In fact, I may be off, but if you're over the age of what is it, 45?
Yeah, right? I'm over that age.
You went to school without the Department of Education existing. So you have, this is what's fun, right? You have a bunch of people who went to school without the Department of Education dictating what the Department of Education does. That's what you have going on in the education department. And it's this constant thing where it's too big. They don't listen and they don't listen. They don't bother to try. And so what you have is a governor who's doing very illegal constitutional things, but he says, hey, one of his defenses too was all my friends are doing it. That was one of his defenses.
I tried that in high school. And it didn't work with my mom. Right?
Hey, when I got pulled over by the cop the other day, I was like, listen, everybody else is speeding. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, I last I checked, selective enforcement arguments or you didn't catch that guy arguments don't actually work in court. But anyways, despite that, they come in, they say, oh, I've got this deadly disease going on. And my job now is to save people because I've got it in my mind that that's government's role in life is to save people. And it's just not. It's the local community's job to worry about each other and what works best for each other. And what's weird is when you see people like us liberty-minded folks, you actually see a higher rate of charity. You see a higher rate of volunteering because we actually believe it's our job as a community to do that. And so, and we can go on about that forever, but that's the problem. That's the breakdown.
That's a very important point, though, the concept of charity and community support in times like these where you have these exogenous events take place, which are life-threatening. And this isn't something, let's be clear. I'm Captain Obvious here. We haven't faced that type of event in this generation. We faced crisis and tragedy. Let's take 9/11. But after the first 24 hours, it was clear that however horrible the damages and tragedy was. And for the record, I worked on and off in the World Trade Center going on for 7 or 8 years. So, and I know a dozen people who died. And I know people who, to this day, not a shred has ever been found of them. They were incinerated. So please don't anyone out there challenge me on my 9/11 creds. But ultimately, those tragedies were finite. There was a beginning. There was an end. The consequences were terrible. Government used that in a similar manner. This, however, is the song that never ends, right? Because ultimately, what we're doing to individual industries, individuals, people's lives, their talents, is going to take a generation, years and years to remedy. And most of the damages from this are what I call self-inflicted gunshot wounds into society itself. And there's no more perfect example of what they've done to your industry.
Well, yeah. And you know what? Knowing what I know now, when I go back to when Obama said you didn't build that, it sends a much bigger chill up my spine because I didn't realize until then how many people really thought they had a right to the fruits of your labor, of your hard work, of your investment, of your time. And I didn't really realize how many people it was. And then COVID hits and you start seeing people, hey, just close your business. No big deal. Oh, if you lose it, no big deal. Oh, what's that? Your kid committed suicide because he can't go to school. That's no big deal. Oh, your kid OD'd or your friend OD'd. That's no big. Oh, what's that? Your friend couldn't go get that cancer screening that they need to get all the time because it's considered non-life threatening. And then magically cancer came back and killed them. That's okay. Just get over it. Don't talk about it. That's selfish. And it shows even more too, is we have people that come onto our page and they comment and things, and they think it's some sort of grift. They think I'm over here rolling in the money and I'm just spouting off things and we're not doing things. It's like, we are actively out there. We are a weird type of activist. Where we're a weird type of activist because most activism struggles to monetize, but we have a monetization scale in the form of you have physical goods you can buy from us if you want to support us. But
Right.
what are we doing? I mean, we're spending money on lawyers and attorneys to impeach the governor. We're spending money on those fees, and if it fails, and honestly, let's call spade. It's a long shot. Our arguments are better, and that's what encouraged me so much. Is our arguments are so good. To turn this down will make you look terrible as a committee, and so, we risk an immense amount there. And if you think, Pat, for 1 second, if we stop being a high profile individual, how much do you think the government's going to destroy my life?
Oh, the minute, if you don't win and the forces of evil, and it is evil, are able to take the field of battle, if you will, and this goes away, listen, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, you're screwed. And until you have to maintain, you have to be that guy, in those bad spy movies where you're too visible to screw with. That's,
right.
and you got to have the copy that you conveniently mail to the local newspaper, and you got to, again, folks who have never walked in the shoes of business and wealth creation. And I mean, not the stockbroker per se. They're great people. God bless them. But no, I'm talking about folks who have started a business from scratch. By the way, folks, if you're just joining us, Andrew Cooperrider, he is from Brewed, a restaurant I'm dying to get to because they specialize in two of the wonderful things in life essentials. Coffee and beer. Get it? Brewed. They're in Lexington, Kentucky. They have become the white hot center, the focal point, if you will, of what is turning into a nationwide rage against the government machine in terms of what's been done to individual businesses and individuals under the guise, the sleight of hand, aka government, and we're going to protect you. It's really that simple. You're listening to him on the Facebook, Coalition Radio. Folks, if you have a moment and you're listening, please like our page. But I want to run this by you, Andrew. There are people out here who put in writing this notion that you as a business owner, if you can't afford to lose this money, and if you can't afford to cover your employees during these times of extreme duress where you're not even bringing in the revenue per se to cover your rent and your fixed costs, never mind the profit to cover them, and there's a difference, and the government doesn't understand that. If you can't afford to do that, then you shouldn't ever have been in business in the first place, no matter what's been done to you, no matter how well you plan, no matter how much you sacrifice, no matter how many times you take your paycheck, and we all know where I'm going with this, slip it into the desk to hold on to another day, because you know what? The government shut you down to about 8 hours a day or 2 hours a day or nothing. That's what they actually in their souls believe. How can we possibly, as libertarians or human beings, change that or at least give them some level of education?
Well, my first question to them would be, so what you're saying is if a person doesn't have enough money to survive a year without any income, they should just die? Because that's the same thing. What you're saying is how dare you not plan on a global endemic that we decide we need to close you for? And we're deciding that. And that's the other thing too. You know what? If I had lost my business, but the government didn't close me, if I just lost it, even if it was because people didn't come outside because they were afraid of COVID, and I just lost my business, that would be an easier pill to swallow than it would be if the government closed me. It'd be a much easier pill to swallow because we in capitalism believe we need to adapt to changing markets. But we do not believe the market should be controlled by one omnipotent person, because they're not omnipotent. They don't know everything. And so that's the first idea. And the second idea is, let me ask you this to those people as well. Why is it that you believe that a business needs to have a year's worth of savings in there, but you believe and that's that business owner's job, but you do not believe that each man as an individual is responsible for their own salvation? So, each business is supposedly responsible for their salvation, but each individual isn't.
Got no answers to that, buddy.
I mean, that is an illogical argument that doesn't make any sense at all. And it's same as these arguments that say the governor didn't do this, COVID did. It's like, yeah, because COVID came in and said, hey, you got to close them doors. I mean, that's the bottom line. It is the governor, and it's a single call. And, I said today, why do we keep hammering on the governor so much in all of our posts and everything else? It'd be something different if it was just a law, a crappy law, or a law coming down that the legislators passed. But that's not it. There is a signature at the bottom of every one of these pages, and it belongs to one man and one man only. And he is not talking to a single other person. He might be talking to his one doctor, Dr. Stacks. I'll give you a great example. Here in Kentucky, we have a red zone designation by the governor. When you look at a map, almost all of Kentucky's red by the governor's standard. But when you look at the map by the nationwide standard, 98% of our map is green. In green zone in Kentucky. He just created his own standard with no science behind it at all. And then he's like, it's not me, it's COVID. It's like you're setting the parameters. I mean, and not only that, but you go on your talk show every day, the governor. And, the other day he does one where he says, these deaths are stories. And he tells the story of this woman, that's great. And then he ends by saying, hey, she died at 95. And I'm like, yeah, that death is tragic. But can we talk about, the guy who OD'd yesterday at the age of 22? Because you're not telling those stories. And so it's if the market is speaking, saying, hey, this is the business model moving forward, that's the market speaking. But I would say the market right now, especially for a bunch of people who are stuck inside their homes, getting the opportunity to come out if you're not at risk and work at a coffee shop instead of going to your office, I think there's a big opening in the market for that. And I think the government is forcibly closing that off. And that's the problem, right? It's that you're not letting me succeed or fail on my own. You're trying to dictate what the parameters are.
Let me make a quick comparison here. Kentucky versus Rhode Island. Do you realize that in the state of Rhode Island, which is about 44 miles tall, has had about a little over 2,000 deaths? The state, according to generally prepared statistics right now, the number of deaths, God knows neither of us are trivializing this at any level, is about 3,700. So for him to arbitrarily and capriciously shut down an entire state is to me is astonishing. It's just on I don't know if it's junk science on a power trip. During your entire period of operation as Brewed, did you ever once, as they say, hijack? Did you ever once grab someone off of your main street in Lexington and drag them kicking and screaming into your facility?
I don't remember doing that. I mean, I'm painted as so mean and evil. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would believe that I did that, but no, actually, in fact, every one of my customers just kind of walked in on their own and walked in on their own regard. Mm-hmm. They were not forced in, and they're not forced in, and I'm sorry, but when you look at our numbers, 30 and under has 3 deaths in the entire state. Can we stop pretending for 5 seconds? This is actually a giant risk to people under 30. It's just not. Right. It's just not. I mean, our survival rate for people under 30 is 0.0028% is our death rate. Sorry. So it's just not a big risk. It's the same as for those people. It literally is the same as the flu. More people in that group die from the flu every year than have died from COVID. In that group, okay? I'm not saying all groups. I'm not saying COVID is just another flu. What I'm saying to that group, and though that's the group we reach out to as a coffee shop. So, can you show me one death that we have specifically caused?
I haven't seen it. I have to bring this up just as a political anecdote. Wasn't this the guy we helped win the election, supposedly? the libertarians.
Well, I think
Isn't that what they claimed?
there.
Yeah.
Well, they claimed wrongly, because the bigger story is over 100,000 Republicans voted in that election that did not vote in the governor's race at all. So, like, for an example, the attorney general race had more votes in it total than the governor's race did. And so the real story is, yeah, you can blame the libertarians for, quote unquote, covering the spread there. You're also assuming that every libertarian voter would go to a Republican. We know that's not the case. But at the same time, you would have to understand as well that 100,000 Republicans they showed up to the ballot box. They just didn't vote in that specific race. And he only lost by 4,000 votes. So it's real ironic to blame another party in this situation when you have to look at, and this is what's going to hurt the Republican Party here in Kentucky, if they do not look at that race and learn. But instead, what they're doing right now is doing things like, they have a super duper majority, as they call it, in the House and Senate, right? So they can pass whatever they want to. And they passed some bills to control and rein in the governor. And the governor vetoes them predictively. So they come back into session February 2nd or 3rd, I believe. So here in, a few days. And they can overcome his veto with exactly the same number of votes they had last time this bill passes. Now, the governor reaches out and says, I want to negotiate. Suddenly he reaches out today, Pat, and says he wants to negotiate. Happens to be on the same day we file our response. Because I obviously I'm a little biased, but I got to say this. Our response to impeachment was good. That was a solid response. I mean, we're talking because in his impeachment document, he relied real heavily on this Akery v. Bashir case. And the problem with that case is, one, it didn't cover nearly any of the cases that we brought against him in impeachment. And he falsely asserted that it somehow did, and it didn't. But additionally as well, the justices in that case in the Kentucky justices during that case were Facebooking out things like hashtag Team Kentucky, which is the governor's hashtag. And so it's like, you want a fair trial with the governor, and you've got justices over here Facebooking out and tweeting out his propaganda, his hashtag.
How is that possible?
It's a hearing about whether or not masks were mentioned in it. So it's a hearing about whether or not, as well, one of the items are masks constitutional, right? By the Kentucky Standard. And she's over here posting hashtag mask up during the hearings. So how's that impartial? I don't know. But he relies real heavily on that, and we bring that up, as well as we bring up a lot of other cases, a lot of other case law. He just simply, when his defense boiled down was, they're mean. All my friends were doing it. Yeah, but I didn't really enforce those ones. And well, look over here. They one time ruled that my mandates are constitutional far before I issued any of these. And then courts weighed in and said, nope, they're not, after the fact. But, and so you just end up seeing, I don't know, if they don't step up and do this, I don't know. And, we file that. He comes and says, I want to negotiate now. The same day he announces he wants to negotiate on the bills he just vetoed. Why? I don't know. The House and legislature can pass them. They passed them once before. They can pass them again exactly how they are. They have the votes. They've already proven they have the votes. But for some reason, they're going to negotiate with, they're making noise like they're going to negotiate with the governor. And, I'm sure when the governor's demands is going to be dismiss this impeachment here, because he's worried about it. Because when he read the response, he was like, oh, man, this is a problem. I wasn't worried about it until I saw what they did, and they tore me apart. And so now he's trying to negotiate with them. And, are they going to do it or not? I don't know. But this playing around with people's lives things has got to stop. It's got to stop. And these people, they message me and they come in and they talk to us because they don't have a voice. They don't feel comfortable. They can't talk about it, but here I am talking about it all the time. So they come to me with their problems. And now I got to feel like I got to fix them, you know? And by that, I mean, getting the government out of their way. Time and time again, same story, government doing way too much.
Now, it obviously leads to the next set of questions here. First of all, what is, and again, I'll steal a phrase from Socialist Workers Paradise, what is the path forward from here? You've submitted. What happens next?
Well, next, the committee meets tomorrow to look at the arguments, and they can decide whether or not they want to close it at that moment. They can leave it open for a little while, or they can decide to draft their articles of impeachment from our charges and arguments and take that then into the House for the House as a whole body to vote on whether or not they want to impeach the governor. So it's much like a bill. So a bill enters a committee. The committee then votes on whether or not the bill makes it to the floor. It's the same way this petition works for impeachment. So it goes to a committee. The committee then votes. It goes to the floor unless we can get 51 House votes. It's very difficult to get that number, but, you know, so we'll see what they do. My hope is if they don't move it forward, they at least leave it open. Because as time's telling with this governor, he is consistently and constantly continuing to do things that are violations of his office. In fact, you know, Governor Beshear, it's real weird. Our last AG, before this AG, stated that, you know, the executive doesn't just get to spend money however they want to.
Right.
That's a direct violation. He said that, you know, in this case, the governor in this case wanted to spend less money than the budget. And they're like, no, you don't get to do that. You have to follow your budget that you're given. That's the rules. And you can't go do against the legislator. You know, that AG's name was Andy Beshear. And the governor's name is Andy Beshear. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe they are the same person. And so we have even the governor himself in a prior life as an attorney general stating that the legislator has ultimate powers of the purse strings.
Wow. Life is full of little ironies. Now, you know, I've got to ask you know, I got to ask you the next question, Andrew Cooperrider. From difficult times emerges great leaders. You have become, not just for libertarians, but for the business community at large, in sort of a rare crossover, if you will, from the purely libertarian to folks who, many of whom you're the first libertarian they've met. Are you considering at some point in time running for office?
You know, obviously it's something people ask me that all the time. And, you know, I'm not going to lie. I've been approached by a lot of different groups about running. And, you know, we've talked and things. Here's the main thing. If I can affect the most change being outside the system, then that's how I'll do it. If I affect the most change by being inside the system, then that's how I'll do it. Because there's definitely an argument to say staying outside the system's better.
Right.
And it gives you the ability to do different things. However, obviously being inside the system gives you the ability to, like, you know, propose bills and, you know, do things like that. And, you know, obviously here in Kentucky, you know, we've got some interesting voting laws and some voting rules too, as well. And additionally, here in Kentucky, we're having, you know, we'll see the Libertarian Party's way forward here in Kentucky as far as it goes. We'll see what they're up to and what they can pull out. So we'll see. There's a couple things we'll see there.
Right. Now,
nothing's ruled out.
No, and I hope not, because I do this little show for the Libertarian Party every Friday night. It's called Candidates Corner, or An Hour with the Candidates, or something like that. And we talk to we've talked to some great libertarians who are candidates for office currently. We celebrate what they call the down ballot candidate. If you're running for the water board, if you're running for fill in the blank, on up to governor, Congress, or Senate. But we love folks who are in that town council and state rep and in the governor's race. You know, we had an opportunity to interview at the very beginning of the show Mr. Rainwater from Indiana, who even at that early stage of the campaign displayed great possibilities. This does not have to be an opportunity just for those who would grow government to a point of cult status. This does not have to be just for candidates who are looking to gravy train their way from the state house to cabinet level positions. This is a moment of what I call proof of concept for the libertarian movement. If you look at many of the ways that state governments are trying to mitigate, if you will, some of the impacts of this disease, they're doing it in profoundly libertarian manners. They're giving people for the very first time a choice in how they're going to be educated. They're giving restaurants, in some cases, new powers to expand their business. They're giving people different ways to vote, different ways to do, well, literally everything.
Sure. Even here in Kentucky, they put in place to-go cocktails.
Right.
That's a new thing.
It wouldn't have been possible 10 months ago, 9 months ago. Just wouldn't have been even considered possible. So you're right. In one of your comments in the first few minutes of the interview, you talked about how we believe, and I'll use the word nobility, of the individual, the citizen, the newly arrived. You're right. We trust people to make their own decisions. We take that whole notion of self-ownership, bodily autonomy to really a complete level. I've always trusted a woman with the right to make her own decisions in terms of reproduction rights. I've always trusted folks who choose to use mood ameliorating substances. I'm a caffeine junkie. What can I say? But we trust it to an extreme because we actually believe in supporting the rights of the ultimate minority. And of course, that is the individual. And your efforts here to promote the rights of individual business owners of literally every background. And that's why, as we say in the back rooms of the libertarian movement, this is libertarian AF, right? Because you're not using identity politics. You're not saying minority business people. You're talking about business people. You're not talking about men who own businesses. You're talking about people who own businesses. You're not talking about ethnic groups, newly arrived, say, first-generation immigrants. You're talking about everyone who owns a restaurant or a business. What you're actually doing in your own way is you're creating a commonality amongst folks who have a vested financial interest, right, in supporting their communities, their families, and themselves. That's what you're doing. You are, in this effort, you are racially blind, you are post-sexual, you don't care about people's religion, you're simply looking for a way to somehow maintain the individual's right to self-determination and nothing less. That's why this is so important. We have handed over to government so many aspects of our lives. We continue in states like Rhode Island to hand our economies over to the government wholesale. With the government subsidies that take place in the form of corporate cronyism, we literally have, and we point this out to people in Rhode Island all the time, and I'll say this to the audience, we literally have people working, running their businesses to pay taxes to subsidize their competition, who, given the opportunity, will put them out of business and will put them at the end of a government dole and will force them into assistance or will force them to destroy their dreams and have to work for someone else. That's what you're accomplishing by this. You're taking the libertarian philosophy and you're putting it into practice at an extremely high level for all to see. And for that, I am personally grateful, as should and as are libertarians around the country. You're libertarian AF, right? That's what this is all about. And we've had folks here in Rhode Island who have done the same thing and not garner the kind of widespread support that you seem to be engendering. Maybe it's the business, maybe it's the time. A lot of it's you. And a lot of it is the people that you're working alongside of. And your ability, if you will, to make accessible to a lot of folks who probably just weren't even raised to think in the manner that we think is invaluable. So I hope you do run for office, because win or lose, and I have a feeling you'd have a pretty good chance of winning, but win or lose, you would continue to elevate that philosophy so that it becomes the mainstream. It becomes the common parlance. We have situations in Rhode Island now where people are actually saying out loud that the government has no place whatsoever in interfering with private businesses or interfering in their role in the economy. Imagine that in the bluest state in America. It can be done. So,
Well, people are crying out for it. I mean, you're seeing people are starting to realize, wouldn't it be great if it didn't matter who the president was anymore? Wouldn't that be awesome? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be awesome if it didn't matter who our governor was? If we could get government so much out of our lives that it wouldn't matter. Really, it really wouldn't matter. What would matter in your life is maybe who the city council is, who the mayor is, maybe who your local judges are, who your sheriff is. That might matter still quite a bit. And I expect it will forever, right? Mm-hmm. But if we could make it, but the good news is that's local and that's accountable. If we could just make it to where it doesn't matter to the average person at all who the president is, who the governor is, if it didn't matter to how much you made money, how much money you make, who's in that Oval Office. But what we're seeing is the exact opposite. We're seeing it matters so much now. And people are starting to realize when things are this far apart, when we're this divided, the only way we can get along is if you can make it to where this person's viewpoints don't actually affect this person.
Right.
Because you're not allowed to take anything from anyone else.
There you go. Don't take people's stuff.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, right?
Right.
Well, and I think too, there's definitely a conversation in this country to be had too about the difference between negative and positive rights. And I think that is something that kind of conversation is hard for people to grasp sometimes. They're having that conversation without realizing it. But it's a hard conversation to grasp that there is a difference because it's hard for them to grasp this idea, because the idea of having a positive right, the idea that you have the right to this doctor's time to treat you, is what's spawning this idea that you have a right to tell this person what to do with their business because you think it's affecting you. And until you know what? Until it isn't 2020 anymore, where you can literally not leave your home and get everything delivered if you so choose, I refuse to accept that. There's always an option for you to stay home. There always is. There's always an option for charity to help out. I mean, we deliver groceries to a senior citizen in our community. We're not related to him. We just know him from back in the day. He's elderly. He's not in the best health before COVID. And, we go to the grocery store for him and we drop off his groceries and we, talk to him from afar, because I know I'm going out and about in the world. I don't want to give him anything, so I keep my social distance, right? But we might be his only contact he has for that week. I think we are. But at the end of the day, I mean, why are we doing that? Just because we like the guy. Honestly, he's a cool guy. He's not paying us to do it.
It's just, from where I come from, it's just folks, right?
Yeah, you just, somebody needs help, you help them out, right? I mean, somebody's having a hard time, you help them out. And I think that is the way we move forward. And like I said, government's belief that they need to take over this community infrastructures. It used to be the church / some other organizations, but even then, it used to say, it takes a village to raise a kid. Well, what's that mean? It meant within your community. It didn't mean within your state or within your country. It meant within your small community there. And it meant we look out for one another. Not the government forces us to. Not that, well, my way of looking out for you, Pat, is I don't actually want to come over to your house and help you, clean up the house because you're bedridden. I don't want to do that myself. So instead, I'll give you $5 to do it. And then I'll give that to this person. And that person will go collect up $5 from everybody. And then they'll go ahead and hire somebody. But, I feel bad that person is just using their time. So I'm going to let them take some money off the top too. And we're going to elect that person. And that person's going to do it for everybody. And that's not charity. That's laziness. That's what that is. I mean, that's what it is.
And unfortunately, what we've done, and this is a whole nother show, we've taken what used to be voluntary spirit, and we've created such an overwhelming government bureaucracy that requires so much in the form of income to support that the folks who used to have time, who were the Little League coach or the Girl Scout leader or fill in the blank, or ran the community chest or the community loan fund, or the folks that were at a particular church who, when someone was bedridden or God forbid passing, that they were the ones who organized the suppers. All of that's been replaced by a government program because, quite frankly, we've gone from a society where if two people wanted to work, they could, but if someone wanted to work just two, each one worked one job, they could live off of that. And the government response to that has been to layer on more bureaucracy and then try to claim that you need more government services because you're unable to do them yourself. And that's where community has gone.
Well, Pat, you know who agrees with you? Elizabeth Warren actually agrees with you on that. She wrote a book called The Two-Income Trap, where she talks about how relying on people to have two incomes because of how high the taxing was and everything else is actually going to be very detrimental, because you're going to require now for men and women both, or men and men, or woman or what have you, both to work in the home. You're going to be required to have two incomes. And when we talk about minimum wage, it's like, yeah, no wonder. I mean, yeah, well, you can't live off minimum wage because you're not supposed to live off one income.
And it's two incomes. God, now it's like 4 or 5. Again, I'm paying 5 figures a year in property taxes. I mean, I
made a post on my Facebook about it where I said the government, you all need to start paying your fair share, business owners. You make more money off my business than I do. Government, you're making money off your business. We need to tax you more. They literally make more. I mean, one of these days I got to break it down for people and understand, like, if you take home 70% of your pay, they take out 30% in taxes. The government, after your payroll taxes and everything else, and workers' comp and sales tax and everything else, they make more off your labor hour than you do. People don't understand that. They're making more off your labor hour than you do. You don't want to raise the price of a single thing. Instead of crying out for minimum wage reform, instead be crying out for income tax reform.
Right.
Why don't you? I don't understand that. I want to get paid more. Well, do you see that 30% VIG they're taking off every paycheck? Why aren't you demanding that back first? Where you're like, no, that guy over there needs to pay me more because I need more money. And I'm like, listen, this guy over here is the one that's taking it off the top. He's like, no, that's the guy who's going to make you pay you more. Like, what is going on?
No, it's people's priorities have been completely inverted. And again, you're talking about an absence of perspective, and you're talking about a generation now that really doesn't know anything else. They've got no frame of reference. So, why don't we always like to take a moment to engage, and I know you've done this before, but let's take our last couple minutes. I want you to engage in what we call shameless self-promotion here. Tell folks, since we've been on last, you developed this whole line of merch and ways to support these legal efforts, and it's as my kid would say, it's hella cool. Give us the whole rundown on Brewed, the organizations that you've brought together, everything.
Yeah, so the thing we do, and we cut a video to kind of explain this, but basically we're taking what we're making off of our business because we know people are buying it to support something to fight in these battles. So we've got a couple irons in the fire. We do some work with getting schools back open. I joke KEA, that's the teachers union here in Kentucky, has done more for school choice than than any PAC could do in Kentucky, right? Which is funny. And anyways, the point is that we work with some of these different organizations. We work with a medical tyranny group called they're actually called MAFA, but they're about medical tyranny, and we've got some weird certificate of need laws still here in Kentucky that need to be taken down. But we work with those groups. We work with I've got a call tomorrow night with a group of people. We've worked with on a lot of events. That's Entrepreneurs Against Tyranny in Pennsylvania. Reopen Minnesota, like I said. We the People in Wisconsin. Hugs Over Mass. Open the schools. So we do a lot of work for these events. Some of the things these groups, and some of the things we do is help promote their events, promote their things, their petitions, things like that. We pay for some legal fights. We donate money to other businesses that are fighting. We help find them lawyers, things like that. Every state we traveled on our own dime. We paid for our own hotels, everything else. They didn't pay for anything. And so we do this all just to help out fellow business and also to honor the donations and the purchases people are making. And so if you want to help out, and you don't live in Kentucky, so you can't come to the coffee shop itself, you can go to brewedco.com, brewedco.com. And on there, you can buy our coffee. We sell 1 pound bags. That is 4 ounces bigger than the normal 12-ounce bag. We sell K-cups on there. You can buy mugs and T-shirts. We've got a couple cool ones on there. And you can purchase that off there as well to help support. We have a GoFundMe listed. It's, you know what? If you want to support us, I prefer you buy our coffee, buy our merch, something like that. As a capitalist, it makes me uncomfortable if people just give me money. Right. But it does. So, you can support us that way. And also as well, follow us on Brewed. I mean, we make a lot of Kentucky-centric posts, obviously, as we are actively trying to impeach the governor here. But, there's a lot of support that can be gathered there. And as well, it helps to have people on there that are liberty-oriented to push back on some of these claims people are making on our posts. You'll see people making posts saying, you don't care about all these people who are dead. And, we get hundreds of posts and comments. We can't respond to every one of them. And so it helps to have some other liberty-minded people to make the responses needed to these individuals.
No, that's outstanding. Again, you are truly doing the Lord's work. What we're going to do with this conversation is use it to point out to other people that regardless of how dark these days are, regardless of how little power you feel you have, that there are other people out there that you can take either solace from if you choose to, or you can take a look at what I call their superpowers, because we've all got those superpowers. We've all got the ability to stand up, draw that line in the sand, and say no. And there are other people out there, and it requires someone to lead. And that's what you and your folks in your organization have done, is to lead and to set the example, so that to move beyond the keyboard, move beyond the screen, and take your battles into the world, regardless of whether you win or lose. And we know how challenging it is to, as we like to say, to question the throne, regardless of how entrenched Mr. Beshear and his cabal's political interests are within the ordinary framework of Kentucky government. Your act is so political, so positive, as opposed to some of the other stupidity that's going on in this country, that it sets a tone for everyone. And then it's up for us, the individual, to use that knowledge, to use that experience, and to learn from those superpowers, if you will, as I like to kid, and move forward yourself. But someone is breaking through the glass ceiling. Someone is, every sports cliche imaginable. Someone is out there doing it, and largely it is you. So, God bless. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you have a full and rewarding day. I'd love to get with you offline and get to know some of those other regional groups so we can amplify their efforts. Because if there's a takeaway from all of this, what you've also managed to dispel in this conversation is we didn't talk about swamps. We didn't talk about collusion. We didn't talk about grand schemes. What we talked about were based purely in fact. A government who has a constitution, who swore to uphold that constitution, and has chosen to abandon it, and has done so in a well-supported, well-documented set of steps that they've taken, and you, utilizing government, if you will, against themselves, which is the best part, all right, are choosing to challenge them in a methodical, mature, careful, and highly positive manner, no matter what rhetoric they try to throw up against the wall.
I don't know if I'd say mature. I did make a video where I tried to wear 10 masks today. So
we all saw that, and we will be sharing that. But your point was very well taken, and I know that tomorrow, in your honor, I will be wearing multiple masks, and I invite people who watch this show tonight to go out and tomorrow wear multiple masks. Please, it is your duty.
As many as you can.
As many as you can. As many as you can imagine. And I've met a number of people of variety of physical statures and size and shapes who have been able to avail themselves of multiple masks in manners in which no one ever just engineered a mask for. That's all I'm going to say.
Listen, if you cannot breathe, you cannot breathe in COVID. It's simple science.
If we could just take that to heart, that would cure. That would just put an end to all of this. It really would.
It would, right?
Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Pat.
We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting around the world on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network. Well, at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio. If you made it through this whole show, we're grateful for you spending time with us. We'd ask you simply to support brewedco.com. We'll ask you also, if you could, like us at facebook.com/Coalition Radio. Follow us on our YouTube and all our stuff, because ultimately social media, or what's left of it, is really the only way that we gain access and rise above the white noise that is the conventional lazy media, who would never spend, I don't know if it's the work ethic, I don't know if it's knowledge, I don't know if it's they simply don't care, who would never spend an hour or so engaged in this kind of conversation with thought leaders like Mr. Cooperrider. Tomorrow night, Shane Hazel is going to join us. He's an individual who, as I like to say, got up one morning and changed the world. One person can do it. In fact, if there's a theme this week, Andrew, is that we are having 3 people on. We have great people on all the time, but yourself, Mr. Hazel, and Scott Horton on Thursday night. 3 very different people, 3 very different backgrounds, 3 very different areas of, if you will, focus, of concentration. But each of you has, in very unique ways, literally changed the world. Congratulations.
Well, Pat, when you put it like that, it might be hard for me to walk out this door if my head's too big. No, I'm just joking. Hey, right time, right place, right thoughts, right?
There you go. You were meant to do this, so carry on, my wayward son.
Thank you, Pat.
Have a great night. Thanks to all of you. We'll see you tomorrow night.